One man who knows what it's like to be on Putin's hit list after exposing corruption in Russian state-owned companies is author and head of the global Magnitsky Justice campaign, Bill Browder, who's been on the programme with us before. We're delighted to welcome you back. Thanks for coming in. Look, I suppose seeing the whole story of Lipanyenko once again, I suppose we don't necessarily need reminding given what's going on in Ukraine, but it's a chilling reminder, isn't it, of just what kind of man Putin is.
Yeah, and if you think about this, this murder took place with radioactive material in central London in 2006. Okay, so here we are, 15 or 17 years later, and we didn't wise up back then. It was pretty obvious that if Putin is ready to conduct a nuclear assassination in London, we should have gotten a lot tougher, a lot quicker, and we didn't. And I think to a certain extent, what we see right now in Ukraine is the result of our inaction over the last 17 years.
Yeah, I mean, basically he felt as though he could act with impunity. It happened with Sergei Skripal as well to an extent. And I know that obviously in your own experience of having been, I suppose, top of his hit list with 8 Interpol red notices against you, Putin really, he could have done the same to you.
He could have. And his plan for me was to arrest me, get me back to Russia, torture me in his own prison, and then kill me after that. He wanted to torture me to get a false confession before killing me. And so the polonium thing wasn't quite in his plans, but he's been after me for a very long time, and he's been after a lot of people. And we're just starting to wake up to that the guy is a cold-blooded murderer who's ready to, he's a psychopath. He's basically got no conscience, no empathy, and he will kill thousands, millions, whatever he's got to do to achieve his own goals.
So with the all eyes on Ukraine, and is Putin no longer looking to foreign shores for people he can bump off, or is he still very much a global risk?
No, Putin never forgives and never forgets. He's a small, vindictive man. Anyone who's ever wronged him, betrayed him, disrespected him is on his hit list. And he's sending his soldiers into Ukraine, and his assassins continue to scour the world going after their targets and their enemies.
So I suppose with that in mind, you will forever be looking over your shoulder, but you're undeterred. You've gone around the world as a human rights activist now. And in fact, you were the first person in 35 years to get the Americans to even sanction the Russians, which, I mean, just such an enormous achievement. And of course, look where we are now with significant sanctions across the board. I don't know how many countries as well have adopted the Magnitsky Act.
Yeah, so we have this Magnitsky Act. After my lawyer, Sergei Magnitsky, was murdered, we came up with this idea to freeze the assets and ban the visas, not of the whole country, but just to the guys who are doing the terrible stuff, all the murderers and torturers, etc. The United States passed the Magnitsky Act in 2012, and there are now 35 countries around the world that have the Magnitsky Act.
Amazing.
And this was the template, which is now being used on thousands and thousands of Russians, including these oligarchs whose yachts and planes and villas are being frozen around the world.
And has that worked? Has it crushed his war machine? I mean, are we seeing the dying days of the Kremlin under Putin?
Well, the thing about, no, it hasn't worked. We haven't seen the dying days of Putin. Sanctions can either be a deterrent or they can be a punishment. If we had used sanctions after polonium, Lipanyenko 2006, and after the Georgian invasion, or after the Crimean invasion, or after Salisbury, after a million different things, it might have been a deterrent for what he's doing right now. Now it's a punishment. And the only way the punishment is going to work is if we completely dry up his financial resources so he can't pay for this war. And we're not anywhere near there yet. We've frozen a lot of money, but we haven't frozen. He's still getting $1 billion a day selling oil and gas to the West, and he's spending $1 billion a day killing Ukrainians.
And here in London, of course, special significance. Obviously, this murder was conducted here, but also London continues to be the kind of money laundering capital of the world for Russian assets. What more should the British government be doing about this?
Well, the first thing the British government could be doing about this is to prosecute a Russian money launderer. Yeah. In the 22 years since Vladimir Putin has taken power, there has not been a single prosecution of Russian money laundering. And estimates range from $250 billion to $1 trillion have been laundered through this country, and not one prosecution. And so if this country really wants to clean up its act, I mean, this country should be on the blacklist for money laundering. It should be considered worse than some of the worst, Caribbean countries when it comes to money laundering, and there's not been a single prosecution.
So why do you think that Britain continues to turn a blind eye then?
It's either incompetence, political motivation, or corruption, or some combination of the three.
When it comes to Lipanyenko, I know you're in touch with his widow, Marina Lipanyenko. In fact, she was at your awards in London last week, the Magnitsky Awards. In fact, the winner of that was Nazanin Zaghari-Ratcliffe, going through so many topics there. But just in terms of Lipanyenko and the serialisation on ITV, will you be able to watch that, or is that too close to your experiences and sort of trauma, really, for you?
No, I'm not one of these PTSD type people. I watch, I learn, I think. I will absolutely watch it, and I'll watch every single thing about Putin in Russia that comes out, because sometimes you glean an insight which helps with the campaign.
Yeah, and finally, with Nazanin Zaghari-Ratcliffe winning your Magnitsky Award last week here in London, you know, she is a British Iranian who suffered terribly at the hands of the Iranians. England playing Iran yesterday in the World Cup, and the leaders there, the footballers there, not singing the national anthem. Your thoughts on that, finally?
Well, you know, I mean, Iran is at the breaking point. You know, these guys who do these oppressive regimes, these totalitarian regimes, they can't do them forever. They all eventually crack. And you know, it looked there was a moment, I can't remember exactly, like 10 years ago, where it looked like it was going to crack, and they were able to, you know, turn the screws and get everyone back under control. But it doesn't look like that's going to happen now. And it's very hard to say, but it's good to see that you know, people rising up in all different places of sports in the country, around the world, opposing this barbarous regime.
Incredibly brave and absolutely fascinating to talk to you. As always, Bill Browder, thank you very much indeed for coming in today.
Thank you.